Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we dig into fascinating source material and pull out the real gems of knowledge for you. Today we're doing a deep dive into something timeless: entrepreneurship, personal finance, and specifically how people way back when aimed to make their first $1,000. Our source material for this dive is a real classic: 1,000 Ways to Make $1,000.
It really is a fascinating window into the past,
Yeah.
packed with practical tips and honestly some pretty surprising stories. Our mission today really is to pull out the principles that still hold true, not just what people did, but why it worked. We want you to see how those old insights might just spark some aha moments for you, maybe open up some creative paths to financial success even now. It's all about that mindset.
Absolutely. And with that mission set, the book kicks off with a really big question, one we maybe take for granted: what actually is money? The book has a surprisingly direct take.
Yeah, it cuts right through it. It says, money itself is no good. You cannot eat it. You cannot wear it, which, when you stop and think, is true. It frames money primarily as a medium of exchange, for stuff you actually need or services. It even gives historical examples like whiskey being used as cash out west or beads by Native Americans. Remember the story about Manhattan being bought for beads? So the value isn't the paper or the coin. It's what it represents, what you can trade it for.
Right. So aiming for $1,000 isn't just about getting the bills. It's about what those bills signify in terms of value created, or what they let you do or get. Changes the focus, doesn't it? From just getting money to providing value.
Exactly. And that flows right into the book's first step in making money, which is crucial. Your success, it argues, depends on your ability to make or do something of definite value to society, which people want more than they want the money it will cost them. It's a direct link.
Yeah.
Create value people want and the money follows. Simple but profound.
That really clicks. Solve a problem, fulfill a desire. The book's example of the Ogden hardware merchant during the gold rush nails this, I think.
Oh, absolutely. He didn't pan for gold, right? He sold shovels. Saw this massive urgent need among all the prospectors, bought up shovels, sold them at fancy prices. Now, the book does say this specific case didn't need much skill or business principles, but, and this is a big but, that was then a unique gold rush frenzy. The world's different now. At simple arbitrage play, much harder to find today.
Okay, so the gold rush shortcut is mostly gone. In today's world, what does it take then? The book mentions knowing how to sell goods at a profit. But that brings up that old idea, doesn't it? That some people just have this inherent trading ability. Does the book agree with that? Are some people just born salespeople?
That's a really key question, isn't it? Nature versus nurture in business. And the book comes down strongly against that inherent ability idea. It's quite blunt. It says, no man ever started in business for himself who did not shortcut the time it took him by reading about what others had done. It even compares reading a business book to being like invited into the home of the author to get advice, potentially saving you hundreds of dollars on mistakes. So learning from others, that's the real shortcut.
Okay, learning is key. Makes sense. But what about getting advice closer to home? Friends, family. Because I feel like step one for many people starting out is asking friends. The usual answer is, well, don't do it.
Yeah, that's a classic trap the book points out. It uses Benjamin Franklin's story. When he wanted to start a newspaper in Philly, his friends all said, don't. There are too many already. They totally missed Franklin's ability, his potential to make a better newspaper. Competition wasn't just a threat, it was an opportunity for him. The book's general rule is pretty stark. If you ask the advice of enough people, you're almost sure to end up by doing nothing. It's not saying ignore everyone, but beware of that kind of consensus paralysis, Fear can kill good ideas fast.
Wow. Okay. That's direct. So if not friends or a crowd, who should you listen to?
The book is crystal clear on this one. The only person really qualified to advise you as to what you can do is yourself. It really boils down to guts. Simple as that. The willingness to work 18 hours a day if need be, to skip the pocket money, and crucially to stick when others say you are just wasting your time. That's the stuff from which success is made, according to the source. Real emphasis on inner drive.
That's powerful. It really emphasizes self-belief. And that reminds me of another interesting example: the Oberammergau woodcarvers.
Oh, that's a fantastic illustration. Nearly everyone in that town carves unusually well. But the book argues it's not some magic gift. It's down to patient practice and being genuinely interested enough in what you make. It's that whole genius is 1/10 inspiration, 9/10 perspiration idea, right? Even the famous carver Anton Lang started somewhere. He was a beginner once. So the message for you, the listener, is pretty straightforward. You can never arrive until you begin. And having begun, Never for a single moment allow yourself to become discouraged or stray from your path. Powerful stuff.
Okay, so you've got the mindset,
Yeah.
the guts, the learning, the self-belief. The next huge question is, what do you sell? The book warns against that trap of saying, oh, I'd sell anything.
Right, because anything often means nothing specific. So how do you choose? The advice is to look at your own previous experience, your interests, hobbies, education, and background. Align it with who you are. Maybe you'd be great selling, I don't know, electric ranges, but terrible with electric motors.
Hmm.
Or the other way around. The product has to appeal to you, sure. But, and this is critical, it also must be something for which a need exists. It has to render a definite service to the buyer. It's that intersection of your passion and a real market need.
That makes a lot of sense. Find something you connect with that actually helps someone.
Mhm.
Okay, so you have the product or service. What makes a good salesperson then? The book's take is kind of surprising.
Yeah, it challenges the stereotype, doesn't it? It paints this picture of the typical successful salesman, big, loud, backslapping, the type. But then it immediately introduces another top salesman who was the total opposite. Quiet, reserved, and almost diffident. So the big takeaway is, you don't have to be an expert storyteller, a gin hound, or a great handshaker to be a good salesman. In fact, it adds, kind of dryly, that more salesmen have become failures from talking too much than from too little. Less performance, more substance.
Okay, so it's not about putting on a show. What is the core tactic then? How do you actually, close the deal?
Good question. The book stresses the importance of recognizing the buying signals. It says, at the first sign of agreement, the wise salesman asks for the order. Just asks. If they hesitate, you explain more, maybe repeat a key point, and then you ask for the order again. The advice is surprisingly aggressive. Ask for the order 5 times before you give up. Persistence. And if they try to stall, like saying, I'll check my stock, the pro move is to say, okay, I'll leave that part blank. Your clerk can fill it in later. Make it easy to say yes. Remove the friction.
5 times.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, okay, let's see this in action. George Conrad selling those slicing machines. That sounds like a case study in this.
Conrad's method is brilliant and actually feels quite modern in its psychology. He'd show a big, colorful picture, a broadside they called it, like a poster or flyer. But crucially, he left the actual machine in his car initially. Builds a bit of intrigue, right? So the butcher says, looks nice, but I can't afford it. Then Conrad brings the machine in, lets him try it out, feel how good it is. And only after the butcher is impressed does Conrad reveal it's a low-priced slicer, just $7.50, even though it looks like a $150 model. See the genius. He lets the butcher build up as much resistance as they want toward paying a big price, lets them imagine that high cost, and then he crashes this opposition with the low price offer. It's pure psychology. You want this, and guess what? It's way cheaper than you thought.
That clever framing, managing perceived value versus cost, earned him about $75 a week in commission, which was good money back then.
That is brilliant. Real sales psychology. Okay, what about selling results, not just the thing itself? William Werner and the nursery stock? Yeah, Werner learned the hard way. He initially sold just small trees, spent ages convincing a customer, got a $207 order, but then his company told him, always remember, people expect definite results. Sell them results. So he changed his whole pitch. Instead of selling saplings, he'd paint a picture of the farmer's whole orchard with fruit hanging on the trees. He sold the vision, the future payoff. Classic. Sell the sizzle, not the steak, right? Just applied to trees.
Right, and connecting personally.
Yeah.
Mrs. Lyas selling dresses, or frocks as they call them.
Mrs. Lyas' story is great because she was initially terrified, but her first sale was easy. Why? Because she just talked dresses and dress styles. Just one woman talking to another woman about clothes. Natural conversation. She realized her later attempts felt stilted, unnatural, so she switched back. She started talking as most women would talk about clothes, even wearing the sample dress herself, pointing out little details, depth of the hems, the French seams, the latest style features, and the washable guarantee. That authentic, relatable approach worked way better than some formal pitch. It built interest naturally.
Authenticity wins. Okay, we've got mindset, sales.
Yeah.
But the big one for many is money, capital. How does the book tackle raising money to start a business?
Well, it acknowledges lack of capital is a major reason businesses fail, sure, but it leans hard on that old saying, where there's a will, there's a way. A really good idea, it suggests, can attract what it calls grub stake capital. You know, that early seed money, like giving a prospector supplies for a share of the gold. Hires root beer is the prime example. Charles Hires got advertising credit from a publisher. Think about that, credit, not cash. And then, for 10 solid years, Hires put every single penny of profit back into more advertising. He took only a bare living. That just screams the importance of reinvesting, especially early on.
Wow, advertising credit. So agencies might even take company stock instead of cash.
Exactly, particularly for products with huge potential mass advertising opportunities and, crucially, repeating qualities. The book lists examples like Pepsodent, Barbasol, Palmolive soap, things people buy again and again. That repeat factor is key because getting that first sale via ads costs a lot. The profit comes from loyalty, from repeat business.
Makes sense. So aside from those kinds of deals, what's the book's preferred way to raise startup cash?
It loops back to basics. Find something that you can sell. Start generating revenue yourself. Let your commissions build up until you have enough to start in a small way. And then this is the critical part. Keep putting back the profits into expansion, just like Mr. Hires did. This way, you maintain control and don't have to give away huge chunks of your future earnings to investors too early. Self-reliance again.
Right. Build it yourself, reinvest constantly. Now, the book is just full of these amazing, often storeless business ideas, really creative ways people bootstrapped.
Yep.
What are some highlights?
Oh, there are tons. It's really inspiring. Let's see. There was the Storeless Shoe Business by Hawkins. He targeted factory workers, sold directly. His guarantee was genius in its simplicity. I guarantee the fit. If they don't fit, you don't pay. Boom. His first sale turned into 33 more orders just from word of mouth in one railroad yard. Quality plus guarantee equals trust.
Simple and powerful. What else?
Okay, how about James Winton selling radios? Super clever distribution. He put radios on hotel clerks' desks, needing no ground, no aerial to demonstrate. Easy setup. And he sold them using punch boards, those old game of chance things. Customers punched a hole, maybe won a radio. But Winton realized his real pitch wasn't just the radio sound, it was showing the clerk how to make money on the board. He sold the profit potential to the clerk. Very smart.
Selling the opportunity to the intermediary. Oh, that's clever. Any others that stand out?
Definitely The Country Store on Wheels by Ray and Moore. Talk about meeting customers where they are. They didn't wait for farmers to come to town. They built shelves on an old truck, drove around to 200 farms every week. And get this, they even took eggs as payment sometimes. Talk about flexibility. It quadrupled their business with super low overhead compared to a physical store. Just pure hustle and meeting a need.
Taking the store to the customer, accepting barter. That's innovative. Okay, moving beyond physical goods, what about services? Any clever service ideas?
Oh, yeah, plenty of those too. The book shows people turning everyday needs into businesses, like beer coil servicing. Jimmy Coyle saw taverns needed their beer lines cleaned regularly. It was essential. So he got the gear, charged just $1 per bar, probably per cleaning, and ended up servicing over 100 bars. His takeaway. No matter what line, you've got to work hard. Find a necessary recurring service.
A simple, essential need. Makes sense.
Or Pinch Hitting for Housewives by Jeanette Hardy, a high school kid. She paid her way through college by cooking, serving at parties, even providing care for invalids for $15 a week. Plus, selling holiday treats. She saw people needed occasional help they couldn't afford full-time, so she provided flexible support.
Filling the gaps.
Exactly. And think about the telephone answering service. Lots of professionals back then, like doctors, couldn't justify a full-time secretary but had to have calls answered when they were out. People started small, just taking messages, and built it into a whole industry, providing leverage, basically.
Okay, but now for the really fun stuff. Hobbies, unusual interests turned into cash. The book has some wild ones, right?
This is where it gets really creative and shows opportunity is everywhere. Birdhouses. Joseph H. Dodson worked in finance, a bond house. He made these unique birdhouses, and his secret touch was adding a tiny piece of shiny metal inside. Why? Birds like to look at themselves. They like to preen. Neighbors loved them, wanted them, and it snowballed into a national business, just from a clever design tweak based on observation.
A tiny piece of metal. Amazing. Okay, what else? The snake one.
Ah, yes, snake snacks. Definitely memorable. George Canned. He killed a rattlesnake, tried the meat with his sons, decided it was delicious. Most people would stop there, right? But he, despite the obvious prejudice against eating snake, built a whole canning plant. And talk about using the whole, well, snake. They used other parts for ornaments, rubbing oil, even the skin for belts and hat bands. It's maybe the ultimate example of finding a market for absolutely anything, if you're bold enough.
Rattlesnake canning. Okay, you can't say it's not unique. What about something more artistic?
How about whittling? A.O. Dinsdale. He wanted to be a painter but wasn't getting traction. He just sort of aimlessly whittled out queer little animals and painted them. A hobby, right? But then a hunter saw them and said, they've got personality. Suggested selling them to art shops, and it worked. Sometimes your side thing is the main thing.
Finding personality in whittled animals. I like that. Any others like that? Hobbies turned pro.
Yes. Miniature Antiques by Mr. Kona. He was a former minister, over 70. After some tough times, he turned his hobby making tiny, perfect models of Chippendale chairs and other period furniture into a business. He even made custom dollhouses for rich clients with working lights, real glass. This wasn't kids' stuff. A miniature bedroom set might sell for $5 when a regular doll set was 25 cents. High-end craftsmanship, niche market.
Wow, from hobby to high-end craft. That's inspiring.
Or style scouting with a camera.
Marion Stevenson. She traveled the world taking photos, not just pretty pictures, but photos that suggested unusual style themes for textiles. Trends, basically.
Oh.
Manufacturers paid really well for these insights, sometimes up to $1,000 for a single photo. Visual trend forecasting.
Using a camera as a trend tool.
Smart.
And one more for the detail-oriented. Rare coin collecting, W.F. Williams. He didn't just collect, he memorized lists of valuable coins. He checked his change every single day. He'd find a rare dime, maybe pay $1 for it if needed, knowing it was worth way more. He sold one for $100 just because it had a tiny S mint mark. That's pure profit from specialized knowledge and paying close attention.
Incredible examples. So much ingenuity. Okay, so you've got your idea, you're making sales.
Yeah.
But how do you scale? Find customers consistently. Advertising comes up again, doesn't it?
Big time. The book really hammers this home. Advertising isn't optional for growth, but it must be rightly used or not at all. The key is a consistent plan. For 3 years. Not just random bursts of spending. Consistency is everything.
3 years. That's a commitment. What does that consistency look like in practice? John P. Harding's restaurant in Chicago seems like a good example.
Absolutely. Remember, his friends said, too many restaurants. Classic naysaying. But Harding used small advertisements in morning newspapers. Critically, they had a unique angle, a semi-humorous twist, even cartoons. They stood out. And he was smart. He connected his window displays directly to the newspaper ads. He started by heavily featuring corned beef and cabbage, branded himself the corned beef king, then moved to other specials. He wasn't just selling food, he was selling his personality, his service, getting people in the door that first time, and they kept coming back. Consistent branding.
Becoming the corned beef king through ads and window displays. Love it. Then there's that laundry business story. Huge growth.
Yeah, Mr. McClellan's Laundry. From 4,000 bundles a week to 18,000, eventually a $10 million business. He was apparently flabbergasted when an ad guy suggested spending $5,000 over a year, a lot for a small laundry then. But he did it. He stuck with a plan. And eventually the advertising began to take hold. That led to massive growth, even diversifying into dry cleaning. It shows how that initial $5,000 acorn of advertising could grow into a giant oak, right?
An expensive acorn, but worth it. Milo Jones and his sausage. Similar story of advertising building a brand.
Very similar. He started tiny, a few inches in a Fort Atkinson newspaper, local, then expanded methodically, step by step. What's amazing is his sausage became nationally famous, even though he charged 10 cents a pound more than others. It shows advertising can build perceived value and brand loyalty that overcomes price sensitivity, expanding market reach one step at a time with advertising.
Building a premium brand with ads. Okay, but what if you're small? Can't afford newspaper ads or big campaigns. What about direct mail?
Direct mail gets a lot of attention in the book. Its power is concentration. You can handpick those with whom you wish to do business and focus your entire sales promotional effort on them. Laser focus. The absolute key. A good mailing list, knowing exactly who your prospects are. Richard Sears, the Sears of Sears, Roebuck was a master of this. He understood his rural customers. He knew they found writing letters hard, had this mental inertia. So what did he do? He created the do this style of ad. Super simple instructions. Simply write us a letter or a postal and say, send me your big catalog. He promised no risk, money back. Made it incredibly easy, even said use any plain paper, pencil, or pen, just removing every possible barrier to responder.
Making it effortless, that's a huge lesson. Henry Field selling seeds by mail. Did he have a similar knack for connecting?
Field was brilliant at talking to farmers, whether by the written word as by the spoken word. He knew their language. His rule was basically, get down to cases right away. No fluff. His seed catalogs grew from a few $100s in sales to $3 million. And he expanded smartly, selling general goods too, like overalls in units of 3 or oranges by the bushel because that's how farmers actually bought things. He knew his customer inside out.
Knowing your customer's buying habits. Crucial. Okay, fast forward. You've done it. You followed the advice, worked hard, maybe using creative advertising.
Yeah.
You made your first $1,000. What's next? The book has some warnings here, right?
Oh, definitely. Stark warnings. Once you start having some success, once it gets noised about town, watch out. The book warns you'll suddenly hear about all these surefire ways of making money without working, get rich quick schemes, inside information, and it states flatly, for every person who's made $1,000 speculating, 1,000 have lost. The odds are terrible, and the core principle here is powerful. You cannot make money playing the other fellow's game. Stick to what you know and control.
So the rule is basically invest in what you control, your own thing.
That's the strong preference, yes. Or if you do invest elsewhere, stick to common stocks of established companies with a long earning record. Treat it as a long-term investment, not a quick gamble. But the loudest message is this: few outside investments are as good for a businessman as his own business. Don't listen to people who say you're dumb for plowing back the earnings into buildings and equipment for maybe a 5–10% return when stocks might offer 10–20%. The stability, the control, the compound growth potential of your own business. That's where the book says the smart money stays.
That really ties it all together, doesn't it? Build value, serve a need, work hard, reinvest, and control your own destiny. A very consistent message. Well, this deep dive into 1,000 ways to make $1,000 has been genuinely eye-opening. It's amazing how relevant so many of those core ideas still feel today.
It really is. From understanding money not just as cash, but as exchange value, to the absolute need for sheer guts and sticking power. And then the strategies, like truly understanding your customer, marketing effectively. These aren't just quaint stories, they're actionable blueprints still.
And just the sheer inventiveness. Selling snake snacks, making tiny furniture, cleaning beer coils. It really drives home that opportunities can be found anywhere if you look creatively and are wanting to put in the work.
Which brings us to the final thought, really, a question for you listening. If people back then, often in tough times, could find 1,000 different ways to create value and make money, how might you apply those same timeless principles, finding a need, leveraging your unique skills, being persistent, thinking creatively to find your opportunity right now?
Something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep digging for those valuable nuggets of knowledge.